Calling this meeting to order, Monday, June 9th at 6 p.m. Crosby, do roll call, please.
Jason. Here. Jake.
Here.
Jim.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Eric.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Crosby here. Carolyn and Mike are excused.
This is an open meeting and has been posted. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Zero, okay. Up first, we have Employee of the Month.
All right, Wendy, will you please come forward?
Wendy.
So, Wendy's nominators said, first they acknowledged that she's been with the school district now for 26 years.
Ooh.
And looking into Wendy's file, Chris found nothing but wonderful reviews, stating everything that she has witnessed since joining the district this past year. Wendy was tasked with following new menus from a new director, which greatly increased the amount of production in her assigned area. As our produce person, she's in charge of ordering, processing, and sending out all the fresh fruits and vegetables for the entire district. This is no easy task, as we are talking about hundreds of pounds daily. But through all the changes, Wendy has displayed nothing but positivity. Her dedication to food quality and food safety is beyond expectations. If something doesn't meet her high standards, it does not get served. Wendy really takes on a leadership role in the central kitchen and doesn't hesitate to share her knowledge with those working with her. She regularly loops others in when they need a hand, and then patiently instructs them to ensure food still meets their high expectations. But what really made Wendy my top pick for this honor was a conversation I recently had with one of our vendors. The true mark of an exemplary employee isn't what the boss sees when in the room, but how the person interacts with all the people that we rely on to serve our students. Our produce vendor contacted me to let me know how much he respects and values Wendy as a customer. He stated that she is always pleasant during their interactions, whether in person or on the phone, and he can tell she is 100% dedicated to her job, as she will often check and double check to make sure the order is correct. His words were, and I quote, "She is a genuinely nice person, and he would go out of his way to make sure she gets what she needs." As an employer, that is the type of employee we wish to find in all of our positions. Wendy, I thank you for all you do for the department and for the students of MASD.
That's awesome.
Turn around for the camera. Hey, Wendy, good job.
Congratulations. That's pretty cool. We don't have any citizens' comments. I'm sorry, Tommy.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting unless you really want to.
Wendy, can you have the poster face the camera, please?
Sure. Where's the one?
Right behind you.
Oh.
Would you show everybody? Oh, that's awesome.
awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
That's great. Moving on to consent agenda. Looking for approval of the school board meeting minutes of May 19, 2025. Anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, that's approved by consent. We're going to move down to personnel topics, staff retention.
All right, Tom, if you want to pull up presentation, please. All right, so tonight I'm going to go through just a update on our spring retention efforts and where we've landed. There will most likely be some changes in some of this data as we go through the summer, but again, I'll do another update on our retention efforts come fall of 2025. So we have a goal, a strategic objective around our staff retention, and our goal is to retain 95% of our certified staff. I am very excited to say that as of right now, we have retained 97% of our staff going into the 25-26 school year. I think for those of you that were on the board last year at this time, we had turned over quite a few positions. And so seeing that as of right now, we are sitting with 8 retirements and then 11 resignations. Those numbers are incredibly low in comparison again to last year. Last year, we ended the year with an 89% retention rate. And so again, seeing that we're at a 97% retention rate, we brought on 44 new staff members this last year. And again, the feedback that we continue to get is that those people are happy to be here. They are enjoying their experience here. And so we hope to see, again, those numbers continue to grow. When people choose to leave our district for a reason other than retirement, so retirement, we wish those people well. Those people have had a great career, a great run. When people leave for reasons other than retirement, we want to know why they're leaving. So all of our staff are offered an exit interview, whether it's through retirement or resignation, so that we can get a better understanding for, again, the experience that they have in the district. But when people resign, we want to know, is there anything that we could have done to have kept that staff member here? And so in some cases, you'll see, so for example, moving. When we get to moving, we had 9% of our staff that are moving outside of the district area. So they're moving either out of state or they're moving to outside of a 60-mile radius. There's very little that we're going to be able to do to keep somebody who's moving to a different location. Taking another opportunity. So these are people who are seeking things that are outside of, education, but these are people who are seeking something that might have to do with education, but it's just something a little bit different. So we have some people who are moving into private tutoring, private sector, and again, we can't always compete with that. We had 38% of our staff tell us that they're leaving education completely. So these are people who have identified to us they're going to stay at home for a year. One of the most, I would say, kindest resignation notices I got this year was from a staff person who said, my kids will go to the school that I taught at. My heart belongs to the school that I am leaving, but I need to be a mom right now. And so again, when you receive that kind of a resignation notice, I think we understand, again, that it's not about the experience that these people are having here in our district, but that they're making a life choice that serves where they are in their path right now. And then as of right now, we've had 2 of our resignations that, so 18%, that have chosen to leave to go and work in another district. And so those are people who, again, are leaving to go elsewhere, and we need to, again, unpack, could we have done anything differently? One of these staff I've met with, we talked, this is somebody who had just been with us for a year, and there was nothing I was going to be able to do. I couldn't give this person what they wanted, and so again, in some cases, we just have to part ways. So as part of our retention efforts, we conducted another round of stay interviews. And so I've talked to you all about what stay interviews are, the purpose of stay interviews. We really want to capture what it is that helps people to be driven to stay here in the district. And so we conducted a round of stay interviews this spring. And so I'll talk a little bit about what the themes were of this round of stay interviews, because these were probably some of the more unique in that the themes were a little bit harder to pull. And I think that that's a good thing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So the first theme, which has really been a theme throughout all of our stay interviews, but this was hands down the #1 theme, and it hasn't always been the #1 resounding theme. And that was just such a sense of pride in the community. And so the number of people that talked about their sense of, I send my own kids here. I feel so supported by the families that they serve. Talking about the quality of education that the district provides. So people really highlighting that we offer incredibly vast academic as well as extracurricular offerings. And then just, again, highlighting the people, staff, students, families. I had one person comment on, I know what the values are here. It's clear. It's evident in decisions that are made, And I choose to be here because of those values. And I thought that was really powerful. And so again, just that sense of pride resonated in almost every one of the stay interviews. And so I always tell people when they meet with me, I'm not going to go back and say, you know, this is what Jason said and here, right? But I do want to highlight some of the comments. So this is my community. I've been treated so well here. So again, that sense of identity, that this is something that they take ownership of. I'm so impressed with the work ethic of the staff and students here. Everyone is so committed. I surround myself with people who make me better. Thought that that was a really important one to highlight. You know, that idea that I'm committed to people because they make me a better person. And then there's so much pride in our students and what they accomplish. And so we're going to talk a little bit about one of our action steps is just to continue to highlight those accomplishments because we do have so much that is going well here. Another theme that resonated with this round of state interviews was really this idea of all means all. So something that came up was this idea that we have really committed staff who are willing to step up and participate in the extras. So coaching, chaperoning dances, running extracurriculars, setting up high interest day. And what staff expressed that I heard consistently was, can we look at a more equal distribution of those extra responsibilities to all staff within the school? So there was this comment that I really tried to dig into a lot, which was, if we're going to call ourselves a community, that our school is a community, our school is a family, then we have to start acting as such. And families don't, right, like end their day at 3:45 and say, we're not a family anymore now because it's 7:30. And so this idea was, as we look at our whole staff, can we start to look at, are there people who are consistently stepping up as part of that family that we need to then like look at pulling other people in a little bit more? And I think, you know, as we look at, you know, I know I was able to attend some football games this year, you know, all of that goes into what makes a school a community. And so again, just looking at how can we help everybody, and people are in different phases of their lives, right, at different times. But how can we help for people to just, again, have a little bit more of an equal distribution in all of the extras that make a school a school? Because we all know that school is not just when the bell rings at the beginning of the day to when the bell rings at the end of the day. I heard feedback around the idea that we want to continue to promote evidence-based teaching and learning practices that support all students. So in particular, our special education teachers talked about the idea that they don't have magic wands to change behavior overnight, that even when a student qualifies for special education, that they are still learning and working, and that they don't always have, again, that fix. And so continuing to provide that collaborative culture where all teachers are working together to support all students. And then that last piece was that community building needs to take place all year, not just at the start of a school year. So I think all of us who work in education, if you've ever sat, I don't know how it goes in the business world, I've never sat in a business meeting where they make you do icebreakers and, you know, tell 2 truths and a lie. But in education, we like to do some of that kind of stuff. And that happens more so in the beginning of the year where we get to know each other. And one of the comments that I heard, particularly at the secondary level, was, you know, we're asked to look at each other as staff and say things like, hey, you're not pulling your weight here in our PLC, or hey, we're supposed to be working on this common assessment together, but I don't even know his last name. And so how do we, again, continue to just build community so that we can do the real work? The third theme was differentiated professional development. So teachers just continue to express a desire to have more input into professional development. So every school has what's called a guiding coalition. You've heard Angela talk about that guiding coalition. And for most schools, the guiding coalition is the entity that drives professional learning within a school. And so I had some conversation with a lot of the teachers about how do you as a teacher give input to your guiding coalition as to what you want to see. And so we talked about pathways to be able to do that because, again, for a lot of teachers, there was this desire to just, again, this is what I need. And when I don't get that, I feel like I'm left to kind of flounder and have to figure it out for myself. Hands down, one of the biggest themes was when we are getting professional development, we need learning around behavior management, trauma-informed practices, and meeting the complex needs of students. So again, students are coming to us with needs that we don't always know how to serve. And so helping us to be armed with tools in our toolkit. And then when it comes to professional development time, when we give work time to teachers, which we can never provide enough work time, really teachers want us to trust them to just do the work. They don't like to be micromanaged, so they don't want logs. They don't want to have to fill out an agenda. They don't want to have to check in with somebody. They just want to be trusted when we give them work time, which is a pretty common practice for teachers to be given, to not have to be accountable for reporting out how they're using that work time. Just trust them to be able to do it. And then one of the things that I heard from a few people this round was make sure that professional learning is relevant to all teachers. And so, again, we have a lot of unique roles in the system: occupational therapist, speech and language therapist, library media specialist, physical education teachers who are all sometimes asked to attend the same professional learning. And what I heard from some of those groups was sometimes we just are asked to be there and it's not always relevant to us. But because we're part of the staff, we have to be in this learning, and it really doesn't apply. And so really making sure that if you're asking staff to be present in something, making sure, just like we would with students, talking about the relevancy. And then the last theme was around communication. And so this, again, has been a continual theme. Really making sure that clear communication when decisions are made. So continue with clear communication when decisions are made that impact school, staff, and students. People do not like to hear from the rumor mill. They want to hear straight from the source. People want feedback solicited from stakeholders impacted by decisions that are made. And I want to expand on this one because I think this is really important for you as a board to hear. We talked to our teacher advisory about this. So when we take something like the school calendar, we say we've gotten teacher input. And what I heard in some of the stay interviews was, well, nobody asked me for my input and I'm a teacher. And I will respond and say, our teacher advisory is our teacher input mechanism. If I wanted 350 teachers to provide input on something, I would send out a Google form to all 350 teachers. And then I'd have to sort through 350 responses to be able to synthesize A, what it is that 350 people are saying, and B, how to make an accurate decision. If I had to do that for every systems level decision, that's really, really difficult. And so we have to be careful when we say stakeholder feedback has been solicited, that we know what who we're talking about. And so that was, I think, a really good conversation point with some of the people during the stay interviews, that do you know who your teacher advisory reps are? Because if you don't, that is the mechanism that we use to talk about some of these big decisions. And then B, the door to these conversations, is always open. So if you have strong feedback, what channels are you going through? Are you talking to your teacher advisory rep? Are you talking to your principal? Are you talking to the right people? Because again, the chances that we're sending out something to 350 people and then trying to sort through all of those responses is not likely with every decision that we have to make.
Rachel.
Yeah.
The teachers that are on this advisory committee,
Mm-hmm.
aren't they supposed to go back to their schools and get feedback from all the teachers?
So yes and no. Again, it really just depends on what the topic is. So we're pretty clear with them as as a cabinet when we have teacher advisory on what we want them to solicit feedback on versus this is what we want you to share out with your staff. But yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the idea that over communication is always better than under communication. So again, people, lack of information generally creates a rumor mill, creates, I've used this term with Craig, like fake news. And so just over communicating is always better than under communicating. And then this was something, again, that somebody said that I thought was really important, and it was the idea that we have so much to celebrate about staff and student accomplishments, community events, so many things. And so how do we make sure that the good that is happening outweighs the rumor mill that goes around spreading negativity? And this person was specifically just talking about their school, and this person listed off like 10 different things. I'm like, I didn't even know half of those things happened at your school. And she said, that's because we need to continue to promote it. And so I think, again, just really making sure that we're in charge of the narrative that is out there about our schools, and making sure that that narrative highlights that there are far more better, great, celebratory things happening than there are those, right, bits of hiccups, negative, right, whatever you want to call them, that happen. So what are we doing as a result of this data? So one, what are we going to keep doing? So this is where I said, like, some of the themes were a little bit harder to discern. We had a lot of like individual feedback, and so pulling some of these themes was difficult, but I think that was a good thing. And I think it was a good thing because, again, it wasn't like a glaringly, oh my gosh, we have massive work to do as a system. There was a lot of keep doing, and keep doing means we just continue to enhance the work that's already taking place. So keep doing. We're going to keep recognizing and appreciating staff contributions. So vision keepers, thank you cards, staff appreciation activities, those all are really valued by staff. Wellness committee activities, people talked about how they really enjoyed feeling validated that their wellness was a priority in the district this year. Enhancing the health benefits, so the patient advocate, that position being added, people felt, again, like that's a huge advantage for me. I felt listened to, taking the benefit survey, and then that's an action step being made. Like that, again, continuing to enhance that. That's a huge, huge perk for teachers. Continuing to focus on professional learning communities and guaranteeing a valuable curriculum. Our teachers know that there is not a new flavor of the day every year that they come back to school. And again, that's a huge advantage. Students sharing what is happening at our schools at the board meetings, that came up as being something that people felt was really positive. They enjoyed that the students had a voice, and that the students, again, could be here to talk to you about what was going on. We hosted 2 State of the State meetings, and people, again, talked about that was really helpful. That hasn't been done in the past, and people said hearing that information, again, directly from Dr. Cook, from people that, again, were directly in the know to answer questions, was really helpful. Once again, this round of stay interviews, people did not talk about compensation. So again, for the second round in a row, compensation was not an issue. And so again, continuing to offer that competitive compensation. And then we've slowed down the curriculum cycle as a result of, again, the last few rounds of stay interviews, and people just said, like, please continue to do that. And then what are we going to start doing? So we're looking at some consistent communication of district-wide information and processes. So we are trying to develop a little bit of a better cadence of our communication going into next year. So specifically, when we send information to all staff versus when we send information to departments versus principals. So again, just a better cadence of when people get information so that they know what is really important to read. We are going to make a more targeted effort to celebrate what's going well in the system. So again, I know Ben is working on some things through our social media to just really, again, make a concerted effort to get what's going well out there. And then this was also kind of like a squirrel, but I think it's worth mentioning because a few people brought it up. And that was a stronger consideration for open enrollment acceptance of staff members' children. So in areas where we have wait lists, we do have, in some cases, staff members whose children are placed on wait lists. And for some staff members, they have expressed like that's really a burden for them, and that, you know, these are staff who dedicate 5, 10, 15 years, it would be really nice if their children could get some sort of priority.
Rachel.
Yeah.
So, what do we? The teachers that would like open enrollment acceptance or whatever you call it, they can either move into the district, correct,
Mm-hmm.
or open enroll. Is that really where it stands?
Correct.
I got it.
If we don't have seats, obviously. If we have a seat, we generally would accept. So then the last piece here is we administer a school perception survey. And that school perception survey is administered in the fall and the spring. Our principals are asked to formulate some action steps based on the results of their school perception survey. And so this spring, we had the largest sample size. So we had 381 staff who took the survey, which is phenomenal. Our strategic objective is that 90% or more of employees would agree or strongly agree that to the question, I would recommend the MASD as a great place to work. And we did dip this spring from our fall results. So we dropped from 74 to 68. However, when I look at May, so we administered this the second week of May, I was actually expecting a bigger dip. We were in the midst of budget reductions, staff reductions, some pretty difficult decisions that were happening across the system. And that doesn't always boost culture and morale. This is, I think, a real testament to our staff and their ability to just, again, be resilient. And when we look at our spring to spring results, so 1 year, right, a year's worth of data, we've still increased. And so I'm anxious to see, again, where we are in the fall and see if we see that trajectory spike back up. So again, we took a little dip. I'm still, again, hopeful that we see that upward trajectory and still obviously get closer to that 90%. Questions?
Eric?
For the surveys, are they anonymous, or when they go out,
They
how
are,
does it work?
yep, they are anonymous. Staff do have the option to put their name if they choose, but they do not have to.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to student learning topics.
Okay, so the first topic tonight is an update on our AP Environmental Science resource adoption. We were in curriculum renewal for this resource, which I had shared with the board in March. So I'm going to walk you through the process that we used and our recommendation for moving forward. We have had a number of curriculum recommendations and adoptions that we've brought to the board this year. And so I just want to start by pointing out how this particular adoption is a little bit different. This year, we have brought secondary ELA, as well as 6th through 8th grade science and biology to you for adoption. Those are core courses that all of our students are required to take. So all students will go through those courses as they go through our system. The advanced placement courses that we offer are a little bit different. So I just want to point out some of the differences there. We offer 18 advanced placement courses at our high school. And these are college level courses that are offered within the high school. Students have the opportunity to take that course, and then they have the opportunity to earn college credit by taking the advanced placement exam and scoring at a certain benchmark on that exam. So taking these courses is 100% optional. Students do not have to take any of these advanced placement courses. It is a choice for them. There are some requirements with these courses for the school. So for the advanced placement courses, it requires that we teach specific content that is designated by the College Board. So the College Board is a nonprofit organization. They support the transition from high school to college and career by providing certain experiences and opportunities for students, with advanced placement, courses, and exams being one of those opportunities. So they designate the specific content. They also have an approved resource list, so we need to use one of the resources from that list for the course. And then when the College Board makes changes to the courses, we then need to update our course. And sometimes that means updating the resource as well, so that we can make sure that our curriculum is well aligned with the AP course content and that our students can perform well on that test. And then a final difference is that typically these courses are taught by a single teacher at the high school. So in the other adoptions that we've brought you, we have teams of teachers who are teaching the same content. In working with the pilot, we had teams of teachers piloting. In the case of this AP Environmental Science course, we have just one teacher of the course. So I worked very closely with that one teacher to review the resources and to work on the pilot.
Angela, I understand we need specific content as designated by the College Board. Does anything stop us from also putting in that curriculum like alternative theories, like to climate change or other things?
Yep, I'm going to actually address that next. So this is a list of the units that are required for this particular course. You can see global change is one of those. You can see all of the different topics and units that we are required to teach. And you can see also that some of these topics can be considered controversial. So this is how we approach that with our teachers. We have talked about this before, but we do have a district policy around controversial issues and how we approach those in the classroom. So this is something that we review with our teachers frequently. This is something that we go over thoroughly with all of our new teachers at new teacher orientation. And then of course, when we have particular courses such as this is something that we work with our teachers and our teams with on a regular basis. So adhering to that board policy requires that teachers are making sure that they bring multiple perspectives to the table when they're approaching these controversial topics. It means that they're acknowledging that the text is written from a particular bias. Teachers are required to refrain from expressing their personal opinions on the topic. And then we just make sure that we have transparency around the curriculum to the families and students through the use of a detailed course syllabus, as well as through materials that are provided in Google Classroom. So that is how we approach that. Again, that is something that we review frequently and work with teachers on. Does that answer your question, Dale?
Yes.
Okay, so then this is the timeline that we used for our AP Environmental Science pilot. So in the fall, we obtained a number of different resources from the approved list from the College Board, took a look at those resources, really looking for that strong alignment to the AP required content. Then in the winter, Anna and I worked together to select 2 of the resources that we would pilot. And you can see in the gold box on the right side of the screen, those are the 2 resources that we selected that were best aligned to the course content. And you can see the unit that was piloted for each of those resources. So in the spring, we went through the piloted 1 unit from each of those resources, and then the teacher provided specific feedback. And then I have thoroughly reviewed the resources and provided the notes on that for the board. In terms of providing feedback on the resources, we really use the same procedure that we use for all of our resource pilots. So we have a very detailed pilot material review form that is linked there. The teacher went through and rated each of the resources on all of those components. So both of these resources, there's just a summary of the feedback there. Both of the resources really did have material that was well aligned to the standards and to the AP units and expectations. But the first text on the left, the environmental science text by Friedland and Rylea, was quite a bit stronger in many of the areas that were critical to us. So that text was stronger in fostering learning of skills and concepts, as well as promoting collaboration. The lessons were well sequenced and were very well aligned to the AP course outline. And it had very strong formative and summative assessments, as well as practice questions and assessments for that AP exam. So overall, the environmental science text was rated much higher. The components there were rated at a 4 or a 5, with 5 being the strongest. In contrast to the other textbook, the Miller and Spoolman book, some of the components were rated a 4, none of the components were rated a 5, and many were a 2 or 3. So our recommendation for moving forward would be that we adopt the environmental science text by Friedland and Rylea for this course. There is a summary of the adoption cost. We are looking at purchasing a class set of textbooks. That would be 35 textbooks to have for use in the classroom. The students would not take those home. However, every student in the class would have access to the textbook through the digital portal. The digital portal would have the full textbook as well as any other resources that are provided with the text. The price that you see there is for a 6-year license for each of the students for that digital portal. We did price this out on an annual basis, and it just isn't cost effective. Annually, it costs $55 per license per student. And when you do it in a 6-year adoption, it works out to be just under $16 per license per student. So we would recommend going with the 6-year cost for that. All of the teacher materials are provided free of charge, and then there's a 5% shipping fee. That's for all of the print materials. Yep.
Where does the differential between the number of textbooks and the amount of online access come from?
Yep, so there are 60 students that are registered for the course. So that's the reason for 60 licenses for the online portal. And then the physical textbook is just going to be a classroom set. So the students would utilize that within the classroom. It would not leave the classroom. So 30 texts per section would be enough to cover the text, with a few extra there, just in case those are needed. So the total cost of the adoption is $11,655.11. So next steps for this is I would bring this back on Monday at the regular board meeting for approval from the board. If approved, we would purchase the resources and then begin our summer curriculum work, working on some design of lessons and assessment and our teaching and learning practices to align with the resource. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Eric?
Is there any way we could tell them to, sharpen the pencil a little bit on that 5%? I don't think it takes $330 to ship a box.
I can ask. These are large textbooks.
Okay.
They are pretty substantial, but I can definitely ask.
Thank you.
For June, for the next meeting, when this is going to come up, can we have the materials we're going to use, like, to show show our students the alternative, like, theories that we're going to use?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, and then Ben's going to come up for the next topic, and he is going to talk to you about streamlining our social media communication and improving communication with families and residents.
Tom, can you pull up the presentation?
Hi, Ben.
Good evening. I think it's the first time I've spoken to all of you in a while without any student learning data, so I feel a little bit like a fish out of water here. But one of my other hats that I wear is social media and communications primarily for the district. And so I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about a challenge that we face and then a solution that we're pretty excited about proposing to you tonight. So Tom, if you want to go to the next slide, please. In Mukwonago, and I've been here, I think we're going on year 13 now, one of our challenges, we don't have a lot of great ways of getting our messaging out to the community. Some of you might remember the Mukwonago Chief. That was a newspaper here in town that actually did get some saturation and some reach, but since it was a great paper, and we were very blessed to have them as such a supporter of our schools. Since that paper went defunct, the Mukwonago Times has done what they can, and we're very appreciative of their support. The Waukesha Freeman, especially lately, last couple of months, have done a nice job of publishing some of the things that I've been sending them, the positive things I've been sending them. You know, but we live out in a place where the Journal Sentinel doesn't give us a lot of time. Television. Just
Can you speak into the microphone?
we're just too far out. That's really what it comes down to. So.
Anybody read the Journal Sentinel anyway?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons too, Craig, for that too. And but you know, it goes with the Freeman too. The Freeman's got a little bit different bent. So I mean, we live in an area where we don't have a lot of saturation, and so we can't get that positive messaging out like Rachel was talking about. It's a little bit more difficult. You know, there is one thing that we also do internally though that doesn't help us, and that's we fragment our social media messaging. So right now, each school has its own social media account. We have a district account on top of that, and literally we are all fighting over the same eyeballs. In a world where social media success is really so predicated on the amount of interactions you get, the clicks, the shares, the likes of your viewers and your users, we are all fighting for that same group of people. We're really diffusing our messaging, we're diffusing our footprint, and so in effect, we're actually making ourselves less successful. We're also creating a challenge for our families. If you've got parents in multiple schools, or if you've got students, if you're a parent with students in multiple schools, you've got to follow multiple school social media outlets. If you're a community member that wants to know what's going on in our schools, you're going to have to follow 9 different channels. And if you follow a lot of different things in social media, that's going to get lost in everything else that's going on. There's a lot of clutter in social media. So we have to fight through that messaging as well. Last but not least, you know, we are a district that prides itself on trying to spend as much of our revenue on student learning. How do we impact student learning? Does something that we do impact student learning? And right now we have staff that are dedicated to social media development in roles like our principals. Some of our principals help manage that. We've got librarians that manage that. We've got front office staff that manage that. And honestly, their jobs are important in other areas. We want our principals doing teacher evaluations and leading building improvement plans. Our librarians are going to, at the elementary level anyway, have slightly different looking positions next year. We need them focusing on that and on the student learning aspects of that. So it's time to make a change. And so it's kind of a two-faceted approach here. If you want to go to the next slide, Tom. First and foremost is we want to do some consolidation here. So on the left, we have sort of that mess that if you want to follow everything going on, you've got to follow every single one of those individual social media feeds. So you've got 8 schools and a district account. And we want to move to what's on the right. And we want to take everything going on in our schools, all of the great things going on, and funnel them into one district social media channel so that we can consolidate that voice and really refine what we're doing and really focus that messaging out there. So if you want to go to the next slide then. So in doing that, our proposal, and we're excited about this, is partnering with a company called Social School for EDU. They are a Wisconsin-based small business. They're located just north of like the Eau Claire area, headed up by a mom. She was a stay-at-home mom and started working on her own district's social media accounts. She was asked by them. And that was a number of years ago, and it's expanded to over 90 different districts, about 90 different districts. I think we would actually be district number 90, most of which are in Wisconsin. They focus on helping school districts create what she calls awesome social media. And really their motto is they want to make the positive so loud that the negative is almost impossible to hear. And that's what we're looking to do here. We want to make the positive that we do. And there are so many amazing things that we do in our district. We want to get that word out there. And so partnering with Social School for EDU would basically mean that we would work with an account manager. That person would work directly with me, but would also take content from our teachers and from users across the district. And that person would provide all of the branding, all of the graphic design, all of the editing, all of the messaging that goes with it, with a goal of posting a minimum of 2 times per day on a district Facebook and Instagram account. Doesn't seem like much, but when you think about the minimum size of it, and we'd like to get to more than that, we can really create a really effective footprint by narrowing that down to just that district account. Our responsibility in that is that our district staff would get trained. They would have a district email address that they would email things like photos, videos, and the content to the account manager, who would then take that information. Like I said, they would package it. They would make it pretty for the web. They would put the hashtags. They would do all the things that they know from their research helps generate the kinds of interactions that we want to see. Another thing that they do that would be very important is they do help monitor our comments. Now, we do not censor the comments unless it's egregious on our social media feeds, and we would maintain that. But there's a lot of spam that ends up on there. You may have seen on our district and school Facebook posts. Occasionally, you'll see people that have no connection to Mukwonago putting spammy kinds of links out there to fake news or made-up videos and things like that. That can be difficult to maintain and monitor. That account manager is going to monitor that. They're going to do that even on evenings and weekends, which is a huge piece to track and to monitor. But one other important thing that I think is worth remembering out of this is that we would retain that ownership of our social media. They are still our accounts. 2 reasons why I think that's important. The first is for emergency communications. Let's say we have a server room that floods and that it affects our ability to communicate out. I need to be able to post on social media that something like school might have to be canceled for such and such an event that could, completely hypothetical, right? That's important that we have that ability to do that just-in-time communications. Second, if we try this and we decide it doesn't work and it's not really for us, we would be able to bring that ownership back in-house. So if there ever was a change made, it's not like they're taking ownership of this and we lose control over that. We still control that in the long run. And to me, that's a really big deal. As I mentioned, that requires consolidation of our school social media accounts into that one single district account. And then the other thing I'd like to point out is that we've had conversations over, I'd say the last year and a half with our administrative team about this. They are on board with this. We also brought it to our parent advisory committee as well, and they were universally in support of this as well. I think they feel the burden and the challenge of trying to follow these different social media accounts, and they'd like to see what we do in one Mukwonago. I think there's a lot of positive things that can come from this. Things that we can't do right now, things like Throwback Thursdays, for example. We could try something like that. And in a community like Mukwonago, where so many of our people, so many of our kids that go to school here, they graduate here and they move back here, and they move back and they raise families, generates that sense of community around our school district, which you can really build through social media. Last bullet point there is the cost. If we go with a year-to-year contract, it would be $13,500 per year. The 3-year contract would be $1,000 off of that, which is what I would be recommending. There is no penalty if you end that contract early, other than paying the difference to the yearly rate. So there really is a very low risk in going with that 3-year contract. If after 1 year we decided this wasn't for us, we pay the $1,000 difference and we're done. The other piece that's not in here is there's about a $1,200 annual expense that we use for me to be able to monitor all of the social media networks at once. Wouldn't have to maintain that. So the actual new expenditure in that would be a little bit less. Questions?
Jason?
So if you're going to go from 9 schools down to one central source, who distills and decides you know, you've got 9 schools, let's say each one's got 1.5 things they want to say each day. Who's deciding, you know, what gets the footprint that day?
Yeah, so I'd be working with the account manager to sort of work through that filtering. We would try to get equitable access to that. I mean, that's a key piece. We want to make sure that each of our schools has an equal footing on there, but obviously some things rise a little bit higher up the ladder than other events do. So those things would also take a priority. And at the end of the day, if the account manager has a question, they're going to reach out to me. I'm going to say, like, this is more important. Maybe this can fall down that list a little bit. And like I said, it's a minimum of 2 posts per day. If we get a lot of good content from staff, we can go more than that.
So this company, I assume they're doing other school districts in the area. And have you followed and seen like some of the different school districts they're doing? What kind of content are they creating? How many? Are you seeing more than 2 from them?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely in some cases, yes. It depends on the size of the district. So they work with all size different districts. I mean, some of the larger ones they work with include districts like Wausau and McFarland. Chippewa Falls is a newer one coming online too. So those are districts that are larger than us or even in our range. I've spoken with some representatives from a couple of different districts that have gone to them because this is a big change. I want to hear from districts that have done this before. Nothing but positive things about the experience. But I think the other piece is that Andrea is the name of the woman that runs this. The metrics that go with districts that do this, districts that have small size, that are able to have a pretty enormous digital footprint from, you know, being able to go through this process, you know, being able to get a reach of a post, you know, multiple times their district enrollment is pretty incredible. And for us to be able to do that would be what we're aiming for, is to be able to take our reach of, you know, maybe 4,800 kids or so, generate a reach multiple times that as well.
Gotcha. So a follow-up comment and then a question. Comment being, I'm fully supportive of this. There's so many great things going on here, and all you ever hear is the bad news. You don't hear the good stuff that's going on, and I'm all for amplifying that message. But then my last question would be, would it be your desire to deactivate those 9 individual accounts and then just have that central district account?
Yeah, you're right on top of it there. So what we would do is we would inactivate the 8 school district or the school Facebook pages and Instagram accounts. We would maintain the district social media account. Those school district accounts would basically be archived for a year. If after that point we decide we're on the right page and this is working well, then we would probably just completely delete those accounts and they would be gone. But in the short term, we want to leave that there, but inactive and hidden, so that if we do feel like this is not working, we can flip the switch and go back to the way that we've done things.
Thank you, Ben.
Crosby?
So just to clarify on the contract, if we went with the 3-year contract, and after the first year we decided this isn't for us, we just pay the $1,000 difference. We're not obligated to pay years 2 and 3. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then just to clarify, because every time I try to stay off Facebook, but every time I'm on Facebook, I see another like For You group, and it's a Mukwonago group, and there's like thousands of them, and I think that's fantastic. But it's also, as you said, it becomes very difficult to follow all of them. So are we only doing the schools, or are we going to consider some of the extracurricular accounts as well, like the sports and, you know, robotics? I see all of these popping up constantly, and it is really hard to follow all of them and stay on top of them.
Okay, so you basically, whether you knew it or not, you asked 2 different questions,
Yeah.
and I'll answer them both. So first, all of our activities coordinators and coaches and whatnot would also have access to being able to send things in to our account manager. So they would have equal access to be able to share the cool things that they're doing as well. So first Lego Robotics, robotics when they go to World Championships again, like, definitely send us the content. We're going to get that published. The second part of that is a bigger issue, and it's one that Joe and I have talked a little bit about too. But it seems like we have literally, like you said, thousands of different activities and whatnot that have sprung up their own pages, and some of which have been long dormant. A coach comes in or an advisor comes in, they set something up, well-intentioned, they leave for another job or whatever. It literally just litters the social media landscape. That is a bigger issue to get our arms wrapped around, and you know, that is one thing we want to work on, is to try and you know, minimize those as much as we can and leave the ones that are really relevant out there. So that's a bigger task that we have to work through down the road, is to try and get rid of some of the things that maybe were lurking out there from years ago that never are used, and to create a good framework for our staff members who, again, would like to create something like that to manage their activity or their athletics, their club, whatever it may be, within some guidelines and within a framework. But that's another step or two down the road at this
So
point.
we don't have currently any like administrative guidelines or policies that say if you want to do a social media account that somehow represents an arm of the schools, that they need some kind of district approval? Like people can just pop them up wherever they want?
We do have policy on social media and digital presence. How well that has been understood by those that are involved is, to be determined. The other part of that is, and has been mentioned, there's some stuff out there that we don't even know who owns it, and people still post to it. So trying to get down to the bottom of that pages that maybe have been open for 10 years now. Those are things that we have, it's gonna take some digging, Crosby, to get to the bottom of that.
Okay.
Craig?
Ben, thank you. I think I'll agree with Jason and everybody here that we love to see bright spots in our community, in our schools. There's a lot of them. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Matthew, old guy maybe like that doesn't have Facebook or Instagram, like this guy.
Yes, TikTok.
Right, or TikTok or Scratch or whatever else there is going on. How do I get to see this stuff?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, the other avenues that we still do the triad 3 times per year plus a
Okay.
for the assessment. I mean, we're still going to maintain that. I continue to look for ways to expand that as well. That hits every resident mailbox. So, I mean, we are doing a multifaceted approach.
But it's one of the complaints of the referendum was some of the people didn't get to get the information, and I get it. I'm part of the problem. So
with all due respect, we did send out all those flyers and the mailers, and that information blanketed the community. So I'll be honest, in the triad, I will go to my in-laws' home. They live in North Prairie, and I will see it laying on the counter, and I will ask if they even opened it up. I can tell they haven't because the little sticker on it is still there. I say, do you know I write this? Oh, sure, we'll take a look at it. So, I mean, I get it. And it's clutter not just on social media, but think about your mailbox. I mean, you get a lot of stuff in there, too. It's hard to bust through that.
So if I go on Twitter, will this shining stuff be on Twitter?
So we're probably going to deactivate the Twitter account, because to be perfectly honest, we just don't get any traffic there. We don't have, and we are gearing this primarily towards our families and the community members, and the research we have shows that Instagram and Facebook are the 2 that most use.
Young families for sure, right?
And young families for sure.
Yep.
We're not going into the world of TikTok and some of the other ones that are out there. That's just, A, we would be spreading ourselves way too thin, and B, it's not enough bang for our buck for what we're trying to do. Now, that may change someday, but for now, that's what we're gearing up for.
Is it going to be posted on our district website?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, we will absolutely begin making that shift once this goes live.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
TK, you're up. Finance and facilities.
All right, I'll do my best here to briefly give you guys an update here on the 24-25 and 25-26 budget. So I think the next 2 memos are closely related, and we might just bounce back and forth for as we go through these 2. So we'll start with 25-26. Based on the 24-25 budget and our interest earnings that we booked, we recognized when we made our budget back in October, our interest earnings on our bank deposits far exceeded what we anticipated. The 24-25 budget has largely been very healthy. Because of that expanded revenue, we have the opportunity to take, as we talk about, and I'll just scroll down here, the first step in our security plan to buy safety cameras throughout the district was, first things first, we need the switches and the IT infrastructure in place to handle all that camera footage and those things. The game plan was to put that purchase in the 25-26 budget. However, because the 24-25 budget has space, we could move that purchase into this year's budget, so in the 24. So if you take a look at the initial plan here in 24-25, there was, in terms of this upgrade of the IT infrastructure and the cameras, was to have nothing embedded this school year, $1 million towards updating our switches, and then the camera system in the year to follow. We have the opportunity to move these switches up into the current school year, and then therefore we can talk about bringing this camera purchase up 1 year sooner, all right? We'll adopt the 25-26 budget in final form when it comes to October. What I'm looking for the board to do tonight is to just look at a high-level overview. So when July 1st comes, if we could agree next Monday to say, let's adopt a tentative budget, let's be on the same page so we enter the school year together with an agreed-upon budget. That's a temporary placeholder with the final budget to follow. But what I'm telling you is that we have this opportunity to move this timeline up. So regarding the $1.6 million security camera purchase, if that was a priority of the school board, we could do that in the 25-26 school year. We would not be able to purchase something that large and have a balanced budget, but you could be able, we would be able to purchase the majority of that. What I'm telling you is, if the cameras were a priority, we could spend, we could put enough in the budget to pay the majority of that cost, but we would have to use some fund balance. In other words, we'd have to carry a somewhat of a deficit in the 25-26 budget if you wanted to buy that as soon as 25-26. The alternative is you could save for it throughout 25-26 and then buy it in 26-27 when it's fully funded if you want to avoid using fund balance altogether. You have the fund balance to do it. It really comes down to what's your priority, and we can talk about that over the coming months. I'm going to just go down here and just go fund by fund quickly. What I'm showing you right now for 25-26 is what each fund would look like if we move the switches purchase up from next year into the current school year, into 24-25. Here in Fund 10, you can see we have a balanced budget with the note here saying the acceleration of security cameras is embedded in here. So we have almost $1 million towards that purchase, not the full 1.6 it requires, but a majority of that value. Fund 21 is donations. Again, we get a number of donations each and every year from PTOs, private folks. The revenues will always equal the expenditures, and we don't spend it unless it's donated. Special education is really, it's completely related and dependent on Fund 10, but it's a balanced budget here. The referendum debt, so the amount that we levy and pay for our long-term referendum debt, there's a small surplus there, so you can see $8 million in revenues, 7.1 in expenditures, but we would use this money as a part of our long-term strategy. The tax levy increase for the middle school project will not take place until the fall of 26, not this year, okay? The capital expansion fund, this is where we have $825,000 here, $675 in expenses recognized, so we have $150,000 addition to fund balance. If things got bad and our funding sources dried up, Fund 41, we have money available to meet the needs of our buildings. We would not have to go back to our community and say, hey, can we have money for this roof or for that furnace? Sometimes school districts do that. We don't have to do that here, so we're adding a small amount to Fund 41. Fund 46, we actually accomplished the vast majority of our projects. This is where the 10-year plan comes into play. Andy Wagner accomplished everything for 24-25 and got 25-26 projects started already. 25-26 technically doesn't start for 21 days when July 1st comes. Andy's already making progress on that because those things are weather dependent, having the availability for the guys to work on the track at Mukwonago High School, projects like that. So we don't have that many revenues or expenses recognized there in Fund 46. Fund 49, that's where the money is deposited. So we had $82.1 million deposited in Fund 49. We have 2.8 million of interest earnings that will occur throughout the 12 months in the next fiscal year, and then $32 million coming out. So you can see altogether we have a negative $29.2 million of spending there. We are going to spend that, ultimately it will be $89.1 million on that project over the next 36 months. So you should expect, more money coming out than going in over the next, this fiscal year and the following two. Food service, we're going to have a conversation here just about student fees here shortly. We have adopted a deficit budget, and each and every year we say it's going to be this amount, and then it winds up being much less. We have a very healthy fund balance there, but this budget that I'm showing you here for Fund 50 is dependent on how much we want to raise food service fees. We'll talk about that in about 10 minutes. Student activities, that's money that's raised by the students, so when they raise it, they get to determine how they spend it, and that's according to our board policy. Scholarships equal money in and money out. Fund 73 is our other post-employment benefits that we offer to some of our employees, mostly just our teachers. We got our actuarial valuation back there, and we are overfunded there. So ultimately, we don't need to keep putting money into an asset or to a bank account, really, where there's already enough money in there. So now you have an opportunity to put less money in there and pay for those expenses, and it'll work itself out. And then Community Service Fund, the last fund there, Fund 80, mostly pays for our 2 school resource officers and has a small community education program there. So I'm proposing for your consideration right now and possible adoption on Monday, a week from today, is to say, hey, let's adopt this budget. There's a lot of details in this, a lot of assumptions that are still here. We're assuming what our third Friday head counts are going to be, how much revenue we're going to get. Those are our absolute best guesses at this time. All of this will be reanalyzed and adopted in October in final form. But as a best practice, we should have a budget in place come July 1st, so we're all kind of unified into a budget, if that makes sense. Okay? Any questions about any of that stuff there?
Yes, the cameras. So we're going to own the cameras, like when we go to like a security company to monitor our cameras. We're going to own the cameras, but we'll just pay for their service.
The way the system works is it's a cloud-based system that we'd be proposing. There's no additional monitoring outside of what we have, but also the AI features in there that give us the alerts. So there's not an additional layer to that is, there's nobody sitting in a box somewhere keeping an eye on it, but the enhanced technology allows for better monitoring in the schools.
But we own the cameras, right?
We own the cameras, we own the system, we own the data. Yep.
And how about we need the fiber cable too, correct? To run these?
That's the switches. So you saw that $1 million. That's the infrastructure that needs to be added before we could make the decision to go to a more intense or higher quality monitoring system.
Thank you.
Dale.
Craig?
So we talked about added security, bringing in extra resource officers, paying outside agents to come in. We think that with this new security camera system, by the time someone gets in our parking lot, opens his car door, between face recognition, license plate recognition, everything else, we'll know who that person is, correct?
We have a much better ability to monitor our spaces, our outside and inside with an enhanced program. Some of the details of that will come down the road. This software technology is evolving. It seems like every day there's updates. The nice thing about the systems that we're looking at is once purchased, the updates are part of the program. They come with licensing. I mean, everything now comes with licensing that's cloud-based. We would be advocating for a 10-year license, and that would then keep the software updated for 10 years, and it's all part of that initial purchase. So
and the reason I'm going here, Doctor, is because some of the fake news was that we don't care about school safety. Well, this is a commitment to school safety times 100 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, school safety is our top priority, and I mean any comments to the contrary are simply false. It is an absolute priority for us.
Okay. Any other questions? Eric?
Just with this quote, was this quote done before or after the referendum was passed? And the only reason I ask that is any of the new infrastructure going to be minimized? Is it going to be a little bit cheaper maybe with the new build?
For the camera system, you're
And the switches. I mean, I would assume they're going to put the
The switches are committed to. We already have locked in pricing on that. That's a known. The camera system, there are some options. Obviously,
We're in the process of getting the estimate. So our buildings have been walked through. The maps, including for the new middle school, the blueprints are in the hands of Heartland Business Solutions right now. Those folks are doing the initial camera estimate for us. How many do we need? Making sure, we've prioritized not having blind spots in our buildings, making sure we have the exterior coverage that we need. And they're working on that quote. We met with our referendum, our building team today, and we have a timeline now by which we need to have that quote, which I think is about a month away. So Heartland is working on that for us. They're an expert in this area. They have experts that work for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would just like to point out, the reason why we are working with an external vendor to help us with that is for a long time, our camera placement has been determined internally and internally only. And in many instances, it's been a budget-based decision. So what we're looking at is having one comprehensive program that covers all of our schools and all of our spaces. And we want to have professionals put their eyes on that to give us that estimate. So I just want to be very clear about that. That's why we're trusting some professionals. We're not trying to sort that out ourselves.
Talked to a couple of school boards that have the program, the IA technology, and they said they'd buy it again, worth every penny.
does that make sense, what I said earlier about, we could delay the purchase until 26, 27. We could basically sock away as much fund balance in 25, 26 as possible, and then do the same thing in 26, 27, buy it then. But if it's a priority, the fund balance is there, we would just have to ultimately adopt a deficit budget, which is kind of rare territory, but it has one specific intent, which is what we're talking about here. So if you just want to speed it up, get it here quickly, it's just going to have to take a small dip into fund balance, which is why we have it there, is to support your priorities here that you deem it worthy. Okay.
When are we going to bring that up to have a vote or advise on that?
So I think I don't want to tell you when you can or can't. Ultimately, what I tell you is that we have, if we look at the cash bank balances I bring to you at the second meeting each month, our low water mark for cash is in November. We want to avoid putting ourselves in a situation where we have to borrow. The board has $8 million in which you could work for. That's your emergencies. That's one of these priorities. If you felt strongly about it, you could move as quickly as you'd like. Just please realize that we always aim to build a balanced budget, but if you'd like to just move this up, then we would have a deficit budget, which if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable.
And we would definitely come forward once we have those numbers, those more solidified numbers. We would come back and talk with the board about that.
Thank you.
Even if we adopted the October budget, right now there's the amount of, installation, I would say, is we could buy it today, but we still might have to wait to get it in here at vendor availability for installation. Some of those things, we got to work that out. Okay.
As far as installation goes, are we looking at summer only, or is that something that they can do concurrently with school in progress, or?
The districts that have implemented have got a lot of the work done in the summertime, but this is a kind of a plug-and-go type program, so they've been able to do that conversion during the school year.
And then the switches, when are those being installed?
This summer.
This summer.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Then I'll just change topics here and go to the 24-25 budget. So I'm going to try to give you guys my best absolute guess as to where we're going to land this year, and maybe I'm going out on a limb a little bit here and getting ahead of myself. But I feel like we're getting close enough here to kind of talk about what we thought was going to happen, what did happen. Just going to focus on Fund 10. I feel fine about all of our other funds here. So in October, we built a budget here. This is all of our revenues. So on the left-hand side, local sources. This is going to come from Mukwonago residents. Their tax levies, student fees, football admissions from the tickets. Open enrollment is our 300 sources. State sources is anything that's coming from Madison, federal sources, and then we have these other buckets. We thought we were going to get $65.7 million when we adopted the October budget. And then we had a balanced budget here in expenses there. So we ultimately had money in equals money out. We have a balanced budget. What actually I think is going to happen here is year-end actuals is that I think we're actually going to have $66.7 million, which is 980,000 more than what we thought. The reason is I talked.
Great job. Don't tell them.
Thanks, Craig. Local sources here includes interest income, so the money on deposit at Citizens Bank. We have 944,000 more dollars there. So that really speaks to where we say, hey, we think our revenues in a bad year are going to be here, but if the money comes in, we'll put it towards a good use, and we're talking about it right now. Year-end actuals here, I mean, our biggest are salaries and benefits. All right, purchase services includes open and roll out costs, transportation costs. Non-capital objects are supplies and things less than 5,000 each. Capital objects are things 5,000 or more. You can see that there's a couple significant differences here that are measured right here. At $10,080,000 in actual benefits versus the $10.5 million that we thought, we don't have to make a transfer to Fund 73. That's considered an employee benefit. We don't have to do that, so there's savings there. Capital objects, $3.21 million versus what we adopted at 1.8. This is 1.4 million. That's your switches. That's the scoreboard. Okay, those are, we have more costs that we're now going to recognize for those two things. That's the explanation there. And then, really at the end of the day is that we have $66.4 million. So we're still aiming to recognize a surplus of $330,000, even with $1 million of expedited switch purchases this year and a scoreboard. So we're still having a good year. And so what we're looking
Tom, the scoreboard's paid for, though, between the advertising and everything else.
Sure. So Craig,
I mean, the only thing we actually have paid for before it goes in.
Sure. So you fronted the money, so it appears right now as an expense with a payback that comes over time, right? But the here and the now is that was a $500,000 purchase that will be paid off by others through our community partnerships, which we appreciate. But speeding up that, bringing those expenses into the 24-25 budget that we didn't recognize back in October, we still are aiming to have a positive surplus-based budget that isn't very large, but we're able to recognize some large expenses now. So ultimately in July, what I'll do is I'll bring a revised budget amendment that I hope is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of what I'm sharing with you right now, but I don't have any concerns right now, okay? Like I said, the 24-25 budget goes hand in hand with what we're going to do next year, because what we buy now affects what we can buy next year or don't have to buy next year, if that makes sense. Any questions? Okay. Last thing then is just student fees. We do this each and every year. Short story is not looking to change any of our student fees at all at this time, with the exception of our food service fees, which we have to revisit pretty much annually here. Just for your information, we don't charge course fees. So some courses, like a shop class or a foods class, in other school districts, you'll find course fees attached to those. And we don't look to nickel and dime our families. We simply have one registration fee at the beginning of the school year. Any family that's on a free and reduced lunch plan, we make adjustments there. And other families that can't afford that, we send them information on how they can request a fee waiver should they ever need it. So ultimately, you can, just to give you an idea, when we talk about revenue sources, this is a local source. This is coming from our families, and it gives you an idea. Our student fees, I think, are our fourth largest source of revenue behind local property taxes and state aid. So you can kind of get an idea of elementary registration fees, middle school fees, high school fees, middle school athletics, high school athletics. We did change our high school athletics fee. It used to be $100 per sport, I think a max of $400 per family. We changed that to $150 per kid, play as many sports as you want, just $150 one time, and then you can go from there. So just kind of give you an idea, this is, $555,000 parking fees. We buy students a bus, but if they don't want to ride it, then they got to pay us to park in the parking lot there. So that's just to give you some information there. Ultimately, the proposal then is to raise our food prices by 20 cents per meal. Not every school district has taken these steps yet. So of this handful of districts that shared their information with me, Arrowhead, Elmbrook, Hamilton, KM, and Muskego, that have recognized their 25, 26 prices. Off to the right hand, here you can see what those prices are: elementary lunch prices, middle school prices, high school prices, and then what that meal price change has been from last year to this year. We're proposing just to put it at 20 cents to stay in line. We're not trying to be the most expensive, but we're also obviously trying to just manage our food service surplus of the fund balance available, but also charging families appropriately. So at this time, it's a proposal for a 20-cent increase. That isn't enough to make it a break-even budget, but we do have healthy fund balance. We adopted a deficit budget this year that isn't going to be anywhere near what we thought it was. So I'd say we're in a good spot here. I don't think we need
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Jake, if you could go somewhere and feed all your kids, you got 9 or 10 of them, I can't remember, but for $3.50 a piece, you'd be pretty darn happy, wouldn't you?
All day.
As for the full service, all the student fees here, here's the schedule. Once it's adopted, I share this with all of our schools. And we haven't changed these costs other than the athletic fees and the lunch fees. We haven't touched any of these in my 10 years here. So we're just leaving those things as is, not looking to nickel and dime, but folks do have to pay ultimately certain costs here. Some of these academic fees are obviously really just passed along. So kids are earning college credits in many capacities, and they just pay a standard. We're not profiting off of college credits for students that are taking courses through UW Green Bay. We're not seeing that money, but if there's a charge from UW Green Bay, we pass that along to the student. So these aren't all revenue generating. There's just people are paying their actual costs. Okay, that's it. So do you guys have any questions about the fees?
Any questions? Thank you. All right, moving on to action items, hires, retirements, and resignations.
All right, we have, sorry, I've got to bring the mic down. We have some employees that were offered a contract. So Stephanie Curry, who does go by Steph Curry and is prepared to teach high school students with that name, who's going to be a high school social studies teacher. Jude Elliott is being offered a limited term, 0.83. So just as a reminder, anybody who is offered a part-time contract is automatically placed on a limited term contract, which is a contract that automatically expires at the end of that school year. John Whitty, brother of Rick Whitty, so the Whittys are officially taking over Mukwonago, is coming on board as a math teacher at Mukwonago High School. And then Jenny Wallerman, who is currently with us, but was also, again, this past year on a limited term contract, will be offered, again, a 0.5 limited term contract. So this is not necessarily a new position, but she's being offered another limited term. And then we had some resignations. So Alyssa Graham, a special education teacher at Clarendon, Amy Press, who was our district English language learner support teacher, Hannah Richardson, who was a 4th grade teacher at Clarendon, Randy Jensen, a special education teacher at Mukwonago High School, and then Megan Gundrum, who was an English teacher at Mukwonago High School.
All right, looking for a motion.
Make a motion to approve hires, retirements, and resignations.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to policies.
Yep, same batch of policies has been with us now into the second month. We're bringing them forward for action. Crosby, you asked a question about a month and a half ago about surveys, and can we just share the survey, make it public to families? And yes, we can. The exception to that would be if we ever came across a survey that had a copyright that prevented us from doing it. So going forward, if we're going to administer, I'll use the YRBS as an example, we would be able to put the YRBS either in the IC portal that parents could look at it from home and see that it's there, we would send notice. We'll also have copies in our school if parents want to come in and take a look at a paper copy of it in our school, so we can do that.
Great.
Took us a while to sort through some of the surveys that we administer, and then touch base with legal counsel just to make sure that we weren't missing anything in that regard.
Thank you.
Yep.
We don't have to add that to the policy, do we?
We do not need to add that. We'll put that in as an administrative expectation.
Perfect.
Looking for a motion on this?
Make a motion that we approve all policies as noted.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve all the policies. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Up next, we have an executive session. According to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, we'll be discussing teacher compensation, support staff, professional staff wage increase, and a 25-26 transportation fees. Looking for a motion to close the open and go into closed session.
Make a motion that we close open session and go into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Crosby, roll call, please.
Jason?
Here.
Jake?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Craig?
Here.
Crosby, yes.
All right. All right. Open session is closed, and we'll take a 5-minute break. All right, we are back in open session at 8:14 PM.
So the first item of business, as we come back in, would be a motion to approve the wage increase with the United Lakewood Educators for 2.95% for teacher salaries.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve teacher compensation. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Yep, could I just show that I abstained? Thank you.
Thank you. The second motion that we need would be a motion to approve the 2.95% wage increase for support and professional staff.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second for the pay increase for the sports staff. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Jim, do you abstain?
I abstain from that.
Thank you.
All right. And that
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
we have motion and second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Jason.
Here.
Jake.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Craig.